Hey everybody, I'm Kayla. I'm a body piercer and today's a special day because it's my 10-year anniversary. I think it's really funny that recently everybody's doing a 10 years ago meme on Instagram, and it was really popular, and so it kind of ties into what I'm doing today. In this video, I'm going to share my journey on how I became a body piercer. So when I was younger, I always wanted to be an animator, and I was really artsy. I would draw, I would paint, I'd do arts and crafts things. I never really imagined that I would become a body piercer. In high school, I was really interested in body piercings, but at the time, information about it wasn't really available. So there was a lot of pictures floating around about different body piercings, and I was really interested in surface piercings because that was just really interesting to me, and I had no idea how that was possible. At the time, I didn't realize that there was actually professional piercers out there doing this for a living. And then when I did realize that, then I had no idea how to get in touch with them or a hold of them. So I did what any high school kid would do. I pierced myself. And I'm not very proud of the piercings that I did, but I do still wear jewelry in the piercings that I did. This piercing myself and a couple of my second and third lobe piercings I did myself. When I was piercing myself, I had friends from high school tell me or ask me if I would pierce them, but I was definitely not comfortable doing it because I knew that I was not being sterile. I would just use like a safety pin or a sewing needle to do the piercings, and I didn't want to subject my friends to something like that. So after I graduated high school in 2007, I worked at a few retail stores. One of them was Toys R Us, and at the time I thought it was kind of a good idea because, you know, every kid loves going to Toys R Us, but it was a nightmare. And in the break room, I could see the hopes and dreams just evaporating from my coworkers. It was really depressing. A funny story about Toys R Us is that the manager approached me and threatened to let me go because I didn't smile enough. I also worked at Virgin Megastore, which is a record store. I don't think they're around anymore, are they? That job was really fun, super easy, and I met a lot of cool people there. I also had a lot of cool music when I was working there too. And then the last one I remember is Conroy's Flowers. I also made flower arrangements. I was a florist. I made little corsage things for homecoming and did a lot of things for Valentine's Day and things like that. So that was fun, and the people that work there are really cool too. So with all of that, I had a lot of good customer service, and I kind of knew how to talk to customers and, you know, be friendly and things like that. I'm still pretty awkward in real life. So around this time, LA Ink aired, and I was immediately drawn into the world of Kat Von D and Corey Miller. And when I would drive by a tattoo shop, I would just kind of glance in and imagine what it would be like in there. After I turned 19, I wasn't working and I was kind of broke, and I was feeling bad because I was just staying at my parents' house and sleeping during the day and goofing off at night with my little punk friends. So one night I decided to Google search. I don't even know if Google was around in 2007, but I internet searched how to become a body piercer, and I found a few forums that were saying that they paid for an apprenticeship, and so I was kind of put off by that because at the time I had no money to pay for an apprenticeship. But there was somebody who said that they didn't pay for their apprenticeship. Basically, it was an exchange of free work for knowledge. So that kind of inspired me to look up a few body piercers in the area, and then so I looked them up. I printed out a list of, I think, 5 locations with their name, their phone number, and their address, and I printed that out, and I held on to it for a few probably a few weeks. So I kept that list for a few weeks, and I was kind of looking back and forth at it whenever I was feeling really distressed about being broke. And one night I pulled out the list and I stared at it as I called my boyfriend at the time, and I asked what he thought about me calling them. And he basically told me that I had nothing to lose because I wasn't doing anything anyways, and that if nothing came out of it, then at least I tried. So he kind of gave me hope, and right after I hung up the phone with him, I decided to call the first number on the list. And so when I did call, a woman answered, and she said that they were accepting apprentices, but that I would have to call back and get a hold of Jim Kearney. It was pretty late at night when I called. I think it was probably around 8 or 9 p.m. So I went to bed that night, and I was pretty excited about calling in the morning to get in contact with Jim because he worked earlier in the mornings. When I did get a hold of Jim, he told me that it would be an unpaid apprenticeship and that I wouldn't have to pay anything. We basically set up a day for me to come in and meet. So I think it was a hot day in May. It was a long time ago, so it's hard for me to exactly remember, but what I do remember is that I went into the shop. It was a really hot day and I was sweaty and nervous, so it being a hot day did not help at all. And when I did go into the piercing room, Jim was nothing that I expected. He didn't look like a piercer. He was a man in his early 70s, he had gray hair, he was well dressed, and he looked like somebody's grandpa. But we talked, and he explained that I would basically just be observing his technique, and that I should bring a notebook to write down the procedure and take notes on jewelry and other things like that. So he wrote down his schedule and he gave it to me, and he told me like whenever I wanted to start, then I can come in whenever he's working. My apprenticeship was pretty easy. I would set up for a piercing, he would do the procedure, I would take notes, and then I would break down after the piercing. Every week or so we would clean the tools and we would package jewelry. And with packaging jewelry, I learned a lot about the gauge and diameter of a lot of jewelry. I would kind of test myself by like emptying a bag and then just looking at the jewelry and kind of deciding what size it is, and then checking to make sure if I was correct or not. And that way I got a lot better at recognizing what I was looking at. Before this, I was never really good at math, and I'm not exceptional or anything, but a lot of jewelry deals in fractions. So after all these years of practice, I'm just pretty decent at it. After a few months of working with Jim, I started inserting jewelry on clients that would come in. After a little while, he told me I was ready to pierce. And I was kind of taken aback. I was like, you want me to pierce a stranger? Like, I'm not comfortable. And so he's like, all right, well, contact some friends and tell them to come in so that you can pierce them. So it was really hard for me at first to find anybody who was willing to come in and get a piercing. And it took me a little while. I want to say about probably a month or something. It was a long time. It was really hard to convince people to come in, and it's free. Like, I'm doing this for free. But anyways, my cousin decided that she wanted her industrial pierced, and so I did it, and that was my very first piercing, the industrial piercing. It was pretty easy. Industrial piercings are difficult to get correct a lot of the time, but I did it and it came out beautifully, and Jim was impressed and I was impressed, and I was proud of myself. So a little bit about my mentor. On downtimes we'd talk about ourselves and our families, and Jim lived alone with his wife. He had children, but they were old and they had family grown, you know, they've had families of their own. What was interesting about him is that he had a parrot and he loved the parrot. He treated his parrot like his daughter. He would talk about her to his clients. He had her picture framed in the piercing room. He was always excited whenever she learned a new word. He also liked to travel to the Mediterranean. I don't remember which country he actually traveled to a lot, but he would always practice new languages in the piercing studio on downtime. Jim also showed me a number of different important things about piercing. He showed me the companies where he got his jewelry. He taught me record keeping skills. He taught me how to save money. And at the time I didn't realize how important saving money was in this business. I came in one afternoon to the studio and all his things were gone. And I was confused and shocked. I assumed right away that somebody had robbed the shop. I went into the back room and met with Jim, and he told me that he was retiring, and that was not mentioned to me at all previously, so I was very taken aback. I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. He told me that he wanted me to become a full-time piercer, and so we went into the piercing room and he calculated all the hours that I had spent there apprenticing, and it came out to about 9 or 10 months that I had been there. And originally he told me that it would take about 12 months to fulfill my apprenticeship, but that he thought I was ready. So now that I was graduating from apprentice to full-time piercer, I needed a lot of things. I needed jewelry, I needed tools, I needed solutions, I needed my seller's permit, I needed pretty much everything. The next day I made an appointment to get my seller's permit, and my cousin, the one I did the industrial on, decided to come with me because it was a pretty far drive. It was another hot day. I was nervous and stressed out, and there was a little bit of traffic. On the way there, we got in a little fender bender. And to top it all off, it was a government vehicle. It was a bad day already, and I was very stressed out, and that was not going well at all. So we pulled over, and the lady who I had bumped into said that it was caused by the guy in front of her, that he slammed on his brakes, and that she wasn't blaming me for anything. She took a look at the bumpers, and there was just maybe a little bit of paint chipping, so everything was fine, and she didn't really mind anyways because I think it was a company vehicle, so she just kind of shook my hand and we went on our ways. So we got to the location to get my seller's permit, and it was pretty easy. It went pretty quickly. The woman who was handling my case asked me when my business was going to open, and I wasn't really sure what to tell her because the business was kind of already open. I wasn't really sure what to tell her, so she said, let's just put it on the first of the month. And I agreed, and she printed the papers, and that was my very first document. After that, we just went on our way. So I had my seller's permit, and it was marked for February 1st, 2009, and that was my very first official document of being a business. There was another piercer at the studio, the one who answered the phone when I was looking for an apprenticeship. She split the shifts with Jim. She worked mostly night shifts and he worked mostly morning shifts. Up until this point, I only knew the way that Jim took care of the studio. So when Jim retired, she stepped up. Her name is Crystal. She told me that the way that he took care of everything in the studio was super old school, and that she would teach me how to clean the studio. She taught me how to sanitize the room, how to break down correctly and clean up correctly. She also told me that I would be taking inventory of everything, keeping track of everything, and that once a month I would have to move everything out of the piercing room to sweep and mop, which included a really old, heavy exam table, and it was a pain in the ass to move every month. The guys that worked there tattooing, they told me that she was taking advantage of me, but to be honest, I was really thankful of you know, the hard time that she gave me, because even after she left the studio, I carried these habits with me, these OCD habits with me today. Oh, another thing that was really cool that she did, after Jim left, I didn't have any jewelry, so she let me use her jewelry and just, you know, pay her for the jewelry that I used as I was building my collection. So I was at this studio. It is called Classic Tattoo, and that is in Upland, California. I worked there for about 7 or 8 years. A really long time, and I made really good friends there. And I moved on and made more friends and went to a few other studios. Now I'm here today. And that's it. That was my first year of body piercing 10 years ago, 2009. Maybe this will be the first video in a series of my journey through body piercing. If you like the video, please comment and hit the thumbs up button. And also remember to subscribe for more content. I definitely have plans on bringing you more educational videos. So I will see you next time, okay? Bye!